Hey guys, so now we're on the tutorial video for doing Hello World and Asterisk. I've done this video particularly around 3 times. First video I had wrong information, unorganized, ran into some troubleshooting problems, and hopefully it goes a lot better this round. I'll probably have to split this into 2 videos, so we'll see how it goes. So as I explained in past video, we're going to be configuring asterisk using 2 files, sip configuration and extensions configuration in this directory, etc. asterisk. So I told you to use Nano as the text editor, or you can in fact just open Nano, write your configurations in Word, Pad, Notepad++, whatever, copy and paste them in here. Doesn't make a difference. Control O to save, Control X to close. But I'm going to be writing it directly into the terminal. I'm going to be using a different text editor called Vim. You don't need to know it, but I personally like it. So I'm going to actually open both files in Vim. Well, sip.configuration is on the left, extensions configuration is on the right. So let's get started with the sip configuration. This is where you want to start too. What I neglected to say in an earlier video, I think video 5, is that sip configuration doesn't just have information on clients, it also has some general information about the server. So you can configure that here you define your clients typically by enclosing them in brackets like this. General is a little keyword that you can't use for any other client because this is a word that's reserved for the general configuration of asterisk. So I'm going to give you 2 examples here. One of them is, what port do we want asterisk to listen on? What port do we want to accept packets for SIP, for the SIP protocol, for the voice over IP clients to register to us? So we can just type port 5060. We want them to use port 5060 to connect to us. It's a general standard. So we've defined this, and now asterisk will listen only on port 5060 for the SIP registration. And it does this by default anyway. So good little tidbit there. Another one is bind address. What does this one do? Well, I'm defining, typically you might define one single IP address here, and basically that's the IP address that asterisk is going to use for voice over IP. Keep in mind that on a server I can have multiple interfaces. Let's save what we've done so far and quit and just go to our IP configuration for a moment. I might not just have Ethernet 0, I might have Ethernet 0, Ethernet 1, Ethernet 2, Ethernet 3, all with different IP addresses. Maybe I wanted to use one particular type, maybe the fiber optic link or something. But the point is, I can specify that. By default, having the bind address be all zeros like this, it's going to listen on any interface available. So, and this information I don't even need there, but it's there by default. But just to have it here for this lab, I think it's good. So, kind of remind us that there's a default configuration. And keep in mind, so the way this works, when I specify this general keyword here, all the configuration variables under it pertain to the one above it. So when you define variables, it pertains to the keyword above it. So let's make another keyword. I'm making up the word keyword, it's my own jargon, but here we're defining another client, 1000, and everything under 1000, all variables I will assign under 1000 will pertain to 1000. I hope you're understanding what I'm saying. So let's go through another variable here, a type friend. You can read more online about type friend. Well, I can explain it to you. There are 3 different types each client. There are 3 different types. There's one that can only call out, one that can only call in, and one that can call in and out. Friend lets you call in and out. You can look up the other 2, but typically you're going to have this underneath each client. So he's a friend. And Now another thing we have to define is whether this is a dynamic host. This has to be there, and this is not just going to be one guy who's static, that never changes. No, we could have the user be client registering from Xlite, or from maybe a cell phone's Xlite account, Xlite Bria, for example, or it could be on Xlite on a computer. But it's a dynamic host. Basically, I'm just saying that it can change. That's what this means. And the secret, I'm going to make it the same as the username, which is 1000 here. So secret is equal to 1000. Now this guy can register to our asterisk server. This is the minimum that you need for someone to connect. Well, in fact, and as I said, you don't even need this information here. It's there by default. This really is all the information you need to have someone connect. So now we can save this. Now we can move on to extensions configuration, and we'll go. So I hope you understand how the syntax works. Keyword, variables underneath, keyword, variables underneath, and it doesn't get much more complicated than that. Now extensions has a slightly different syntax. First of all, things generally come under a default context. They call it context. Basically, what you can do, as you can see, this defines one client. I can have other clients here. I could have a 1001 who's a type friend, who's a host dynamic, who has a secret maybe 1001. And that can go on 100 or for 200 clients, just this same information repeated over and over again. And we can put them in groups. Part of putting it in groups is that you could do different things. You can restrict who can call who. You could do various little things for that. So, but for now, everything's going to be under a default context. That's what I'm saying. So, so this is all under a default group. All the information under here applies to all users in SIP configuration. So, what are we defining here? Basically, what happens when a user dials something. So in SIP configuration, we specify the users. Extensions configuration, we specify what happens when they dial something. And here's the general format. Let's start with hello world. So we type extend. This is how it always starts out. And I can actually comment this out. I hope that blue is not too painful for you. Of course, I hate that blue. Let me change it 1 second. Okay, that's a bit softer on the eyes, I think. Easier to read. So, the general format, in fact, let's close out the SIP configuration here for a little while. Default format, extension, the number that is dialed, the step that you are on, and then the function, or what they might put in asterisk as action, function or action there. So that's a general format. It always has this in the beginning, the number that is dialed, step. Let's say you dial a number. Maybe you have two steps. Step one is to ring the person's phone, and if they don't pick up, step two is to go to voicemail. That's the idea with step. And function, just as I say, maybe send a ring signal or transfer to voicemail. You'll see that in a second. So let's start going with hello world extension. Let's say when they dial 999, the number that they are dialed, the step, this is the first step that's going to happen. And what I'm going to have it do is I'm going to have the server actually pick up the call. The server itself is going to pick up the call. That will be step one. Step two. Again, this is for the number dial, which is 999. And step two, we have here. And we want to do a playback. Asterisk has a bunch of audio files here. And we want to play back hello world. Alright. Uh, I'm out of my. I tried to keep my videos under 10 minutes. I know YouTube has a 15-minute limit. Let's continue this in the next video, but we're almost done. So let's go.